Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And this weekend we had two races from Formula E in Berlin. It was a very good weekend, a lot happened, but we had the same problem we had at the last round in that no one really wanted to lead the race because it gives their rivals an advantage on energy. This is interesting. On the plus side, cars constantly swapping over and trying not to lead the race keeps the whole pack close together, tends to get more overtaking, more action. But it's a little bit silly because, like, a race where no one wants to lead until right at the end. It's very different. But hopefully we get some tracks where that is not an issue. I don't really want to talk about the protesters because I don't think they should get any coverage whatsoever. I think they should just be taken to a dark room and beaten up. But imagine if they jumped over at the wrong time. Like, they jumped over just before the race started. If they had been like a couple of seconds slower, or someone jumped the start, they could have been hit, and then they might have damaged one of the cars and ruined their race. It's very annoying. The race itself, we saw a few incidents in the first race. We had a couple of safety cars. Stoffel Vandoorne was very unlucky. I think it's just one of those things. But him and Dan Ticktum collided. Somehow, I think Jake Hughes and someone else got caught up in that as well. That was a bit of a mess. Sergio Sette Camara had a couple of incidents. He got mixed up with Rene Rast, who had a very bad weekend. But when it was all said and done, Jaguar again on top, 1-2. After a really bad start to the season, Jaguar are now really on it. They're scoring decent points. Last 3 races, they've done really well. Pascal Wehrlein was, I think, a respectable... I can't actually remember where he finished now. 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. And Nick Cassidy was up there as well. In fact, most of the title contenders were at the front end of the field. And it's keeping it all very, very close at the top. Same in the second race. There was far less incidents, I think, in the second race. There was no safety car in the second race. Nick Cassidy won. So we've actually had the last 3 Formula E races won by drivers from New Zealand, which is very impressive. But Nick Cassidy is on a title charge. Wehrlein struggled to 7th. So this weekend, Cassidy has closed the gap considerably. In fact, I think he's just 4 points behind Wehrlein now, which, considering the lead Wehrlein had going into this weekend, that was as good a weekend as he could have imagined, I'm sure. The Jaguars were right up there again as well, so Mitch Evans scored decent points this weekend. In fact, I think he scored even more points than Nick Cassidy. And even Sam Bird had a very good weekend. Honestly, I look at the table and I'd say we're halfway through the season, and I think the top 8 are the drivers we're looking at who are going to be in this title fight. Last year's champion Stoffel Vandoorne has fallen too far back. He's had a lot of bad luck, but he just isn't scoring points. For some reason, this just isn't working for him, whereas teammate John-Eric Verne is doing pretty well. I think he's in 3rd in the championship now, so even he's not too far off the top. But that top 8, you got Pascal Wehrlein still leads, but he hasn't been on the podium since his double win at Saudi Arabia. So that's 5 races in a row where he's not got on the podium. And Nick Cassidy is now 2nd. Very good weekend, very good drive. He's in really good form. Jake Dennis is still out there, but he has had a run of 5 races where he hasn't scored points. He got 2nd in the second race in Berlin, but he needs to be more consistent to keep that going. Then behind him, you got Antonio Felix da Costa, Sam Bird, Jean-Eric Verne's up there, and Sebastian Buemi, who isn't too far behind, but he has not been scoring. Like, you expect Buemi to win races, and it's been a long time since he has. I think that might be the next big step for him and Envision, is if Buemi wins a race. But he's not a million miles off the title fight. In fact, one good weekend and he'll be right up there as well. So this was a very good weekend for Formula E. The racing was very exciting, and the championship going into the second half of the year looks amazing. I think we're going to have an incredible end to the championship. Some other teams, Neo scored a point with Dan Ticktum in the second race, but it could have been so much better. He was running right near the front in the first race, but Neo just don't have the performance to stay there, and he was dropping back when he made contact with Van Dorn. But Neo have scored at a few races this year, so I think in a roundabout way it's a much better year for them in 2023 than it has been for the last 6 or 7, maybe 8. Abt Cupra were the only team not to have scored a point going into this weekend. They've now broken that duck in the second race. They were first and second on the starting grid for the second race, and that means Freins gets 3 points for being on pole, but Nico Muller did finish 9th as well, so even he grabbed a couple of points. And Maserati had a fantastic weekend with one car but not the other. Maximilian Günther scored in both races. He got on the podium in the first one. Brilliant drive, and he did a brilliant overtake on Buemi at the end of the first race. That has pushed him right up the table. But Mortara, excellent driver. He's been a championship contender a couple of times. I wouldn't say I had high hopes for him, but I expected much more than what he's done so far this year. He's had a lot of bad luck. He's made contact quite a few times. In fact, both Maseratis have had issues. They should have scored points and then something's happened out of their control. But Mortara didn't score in both races this weekend, and I think he's only scored 4 or 5 points all year, which has left him down in 20th in the championship, nowhere near the title fight. Winter's weekend, a 3rd and a 6th, decent enough points. It pushes him right up into the midfield. Another driver I'm sort of disappointed in is Andre Lotterer. He's not had a good year for, I think the last 2 years he hasn't been great, but I thought new team, and we'll see if it was just the case that it wasn't working at Porsche. Because way back with Techeetah, he was pretty good. Like, he was a steady hand at least. But even at Andretti, he scored points this year, and I think he's definitely in that sort of midfield huddle where it's all very close. But it's not been superb from Andre Lotterer this year. And for such an experienced driver, you'd think he'd be the one to sort of pick his way through the chaos that is Formula E and make it work. But he's a driver who's never won a Formula E race, which he's been there a few seasons now. It's actually quite incredible. Even when he was running with front-running teams, he never actually won a race. So, I mean, Andretti are a front-running team. You see Jake Dennis is challenging for the championship again, and Lotterer should be doing better. There seems like Nissan as well, who were pretty much invisible this weekend. I don't even remember really seeing the Nissans. I think Roland got a point in the second race, but it's not been a great year for them either. Mahindra, after Lucas Di Grassi started the year with a podium, and since then he's been pretty much silent. Did I say Roland drives for Nissan? He doesn't. He drives for Mahindra as well. It's Nato and Fenestras who drive for Nissan. Don't remember seeing them, and Fenestras has had some fantastic drives this year. So I think Nissan, the days where they were EDAMs and running at the top of the field with Sebastian Buemi, it seems like a very long time ago. So with that, that's Formula E pretty much so far in 2023. Every race has been decent, stuff's happened everywhere, and it's been fairly chaotic, which we have come to expect. I'll be doing a couple of the Season 2 races at some point this week. I was meant to do it over the weekend, but I've been busy again. But I will be back with more. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on Formula E. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.